Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now there's no doubt that Oknife absolutely brings it with their knife lineup. Today we're going to take a look at one of the newest knives in their folding lineup here. This is the Heron, and I don't know if it's L-I or Heron Lee, or is it the L1? L1? We're just going to call it the Heron, but here a fantastic offering. Now, this is at the time of this video, brandy new, coming to us right away. This here, I look at the serial number 165, so fairly low serial number. This in D2 with G10 handles. Again, Oknife doing a fantastic job with their blades, their blade design. They've been a little bit outside of the box lately. I guess they kind of always have been ever since their initial release. They did have some pretty early models that were fairly standard, but then getting out there a little bit in their blade design, their overall blade shape, and the functionality. Very utility driven, and I like that. So today, a little bit of an unboxing. We're going to break this out of the package, get a look at it for the first time. But with that said, I have a whole bunch to do and a whole bunch to share with you. And if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. Now, before we get too far, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Oknife who did provide this for review. And so as we get into this here, again, the Heron, and I don't know if that's L-I or Heron Lee, or the L1. I suspect it's probably the Heron Lee. Yeah, maybe it's the L1, but again, just a cool offering. Now, right away, you can see, based upon the box, that this is going to have a unique shape. Remember what I said early on, the Oknife designs, I guess, were a little more standard, but through time, as we continue to move forward, they've been getting a little more out there, a little less standard. And when I say a little less standard, I mean, it's not like your, standard drop point design. Like, for example, I mean, beautiful knife here, the Freeze 2, which I love. This is just a gorgeous knife. It's been one of my go-tos, and I do love it. I've had this many a times on my channel at this point, but you can see here just mixing it up. Now, as we get into this here, again, I already mentioned the serial number nice and low at unit number 165. Oknife always doing a fantastic job with their packaging. Now, this is very standard. If you've seen any Oknife products, you've come to understand this. Very straightforward in terms of the packaging. As we get this out of the box here, you'll see you do end up with just a little message on the inside. So each Oknife is finely tuned by hand and expertly engineered for the best possible performance. Stay sharp with your new Oknife, the Oknife team. Now, they started kind of doing these morale patches from time to time, not on every model, but I've seen more and more of these recently. I like this. I think it's really cool. It adds a level of unique value to the Oknife product line. Again, you don't always get this level of detail with other brands. The other thing that we should see as we get into this is a commemorative coin. So this is the pouch that pretty much every Oknife and folding knife, of course, does come in. And then inside here, you have your basic user's manual and typically a cleaning cloth. So as we get this out here, again, you can see the basic owner's manual and a simple cleaning cloth. Not a lot to it, and not the fact that you necessarily need a user's manual, but it does have some little bits of information inside. As we get into the knife itself, now again, keep in mind the fact that this, crazy. So this does not have the commemorative coin. Aha! And that probably leads to why you get the patch instead. Not that I'm completely disappointed, because I don't do much with the coins, but I did think that was a real nice touch. I am very surprised. Yeah, so no coin here today. A little bit disappointing. Now, I do have another knife, actually a fixed blade, that did come with the patch. I do like this, but I don't think it's nearly as cool as the coin. I'm sure this is a cost savings, and again, this is only a G10 and D2 blade, which, wow, this thing is beefy. This is a big knife. Look how large this is. So again, the Heron Lee As we get into this here, you can see it does have a deep ride coated, so black coated pocket clip. Big, beefy hardware. I'm assuming that these are T8s, and it looks like maybe still T6s on the clip, but we'll check that. Definitely T8s on the pivot hardware, anodized blue. This is something that I've seen on a few models at this point on the pivot collar. That nice blue ring, I love that, because it is fairly reminiscent of the bezel on the Olights. I love how it kind of matches and plays well together. That is just so cool. So nicely done and a great detail. But as we get into the knife here, there will be many deployment options here. So first off, your basic flick with the tab. Boom. I mean, simple deployment. Very, very, very smooth. That's going to be hard to fail. In fact, I'm going to try. Nope, you're not going to fail that. Dialed in detent, massive honking blade, compound grind. So you end up with a hollow grind. You end up with more of a flat grind, pronounced tip right on the front. A great utility blade shape. This is, I would call it like a Wharncliffe design. You end up with a full choil here, which I am sure if you're careful, you can get your full finger in that. Now, I would like to see that opened up just a bit. I mean, that is very tight. You can get in there, but where this is going to be excellent for detailed work, I would love to see that actually opened up into a full choil. That's like a 3/4 choil. You do definitely need to be careful. I don't think I would get bit, but at the same time, this is begging for a full finger choil, and I'm a little bit disappointed that I did not get it. But all in all, a neat blade shape. Take a look at this thing. This is a massive chunk of steel. Again, D2. You can see on this side the badging, Heron Lee KN00165. That is the serial number there. And then on this side, the Oknife logo. Very simple, very straightforward. And you can see stamped on top D2. Just a cool blade. Now, all in all, this is going to have a, I guess 2 different purposes. This has some, and I'm going to say like tactical self-defense feel to it. This is in some ways, in my opinion, reminiscent of what you would see from a designer like Dirk Pinkerton. Very similar in many ways, but also just that utility purpose. Now, getting down on a working surface, this is going to have a multitude of different grips, the ability to get down and really draw cut with this. Very pronounced on the tip, a little bit stout at the same time, but a nice shape where you're going to get a good piercing capability, easy for boxes. And then with that compound grind, actually great sliceability. So this blade shape is really very cool. Aiding to the overall aesthetic, you have that fuller into this sort of open hole. Now, that is also going to aid in multiple deployment options. You can certainly flick that open easy, no problem with your thumb, no problem. The deployment here is fantastic. You're going to have many different options, and I bet because of the way this is dialed in, no problem. You can sort of flick that open, so that's going to be quick and snappy. That's definitely an easy way to go. On the fuller here, you can see getting in on that fuller. It's going to be a little bit tough, and in fact, I'm just a little bit cautious because I don't want to get caught. I could certainly roll that open, but you don't need it. You have the entire hole here. I mean, that's just so honking. That's a real nice deployment method. Now you can see here that on the G10 scales, you do end up with a fully nested liner. So on the inside, that is nested inside the G10. So it's been milled, nested, and it's an open design with standoffs. You can see a fully open design as I kick the blade out and getting a closer look. Liner lock, you can see the relief there, no problem. This has plenty of area to get in on the actual lock itself, so very simple to manipulate, no problem. pretty fidgety, all things considered, and overall a very nice package. Now, I can tell you, this texture feeling pretty good on the hands, adds enough grip that it's nice and grippy, but it's not too sharp. In fact, very nicely done where everything's chamfered over the top, very round, and an excellent overall pattern. I think that does seem to work very well. I can tell you that this handle is quite large. So if you have smaller hands, you're not going to like this knife. This is definitely a large, beefy knife and should be pretty good for the overall capability to do some hard work. Keep in mind the fact that this is going to be on bearings, which are a little bit sensitive to dirt and grime and things that can get in there. It can impede the performance over time, but if you keep your knife nice and clean, it should not be an issue. Now, another thing worth noting, as I take a look on the inside, you can see this is fairly reasonably skeletonized to lose a little bit of weight on that liner, and the fact that it's nested, in fact, it's only, as I look a little bit closer here, looks like it's only skeletonized on one side. And a closer examination reveals that the liner is not actually on this side, so the show side does not have a steel liner at all. And the liner is really only on the clip side. And the hardware basically is really installed through the G10 into the standoff, and that's kind of sandwiching on the G10. So very interesting where they chose not to even put a liner on the show side of the knife. The clip is nice and wide. These clips are very effective. I do like them. These work very well. Nice in and out of the pocket, no problem at all. Of course, you can see this is only going to be a tip-up carry and right-handed only. So for the lefties, a little bit out of luck. And if you like a tip-down carry, that is not going to work. But for me, this works just fine, to be honest with you. Certain things like reverse grip, you should get a pretty good lockup. Now, I'm not going to typically do too much in the way of stabbing like this, but I already said I do feel like this could be a potential candidate for some sort of a self-defense or tactically inspired knife. So having the ability to do some stabbing with that definitely does come into play. Couple last details worth mentioning. Up over the top, some jimping. It is subtle. Feels pretty good overall on the thumb. It's not going to tear me up too much, so that does work. But this knife, again, I just can tell you that because of the way this ramps up, is just begging to get in on that choil for the choked up grip. And if you're not careful, or if somebody is not paying attention, they are going to get bit. So a little bit misfortunate where I feel like they definitely could have got away with this blade size being so large with a full-size choil. Now, if you remember, I did say this reminds me, and it's just a little reminiscent of a Dirk Pinkerton design. Not that it's apples and apples, but here, this is the Artisan Cutlery Proponent, which was something that I covered a long time ago, but man, I still have this, and look at this beefy chunk of steel. Now, again, not that these are apples and apples, but very similar in many ways. Just the overall blade shape, the general concept, and the fact that this really could go either tactically inspired or utility driven. Now, a smaller offering and sort of similar, this is the Kaiser Rogue, which again, you know, another Dirk Pinkerton design, and I'm not saying that these are exactly the same, but again, just some similar general aesthetic and overall blade shape. When I look at the Heron, it just reminds me a little bit of Dirk Pinkerton. That to me is an absolute compliment because Dirk Pinkerton is definitely one of my favorite designers. And just for the confirmation here, you can see as I get on the pivot assembly, that is the T8, so no problem there. On the body screws, that is also a T8, which is nice. And then the clip, nope. Those are T6s. So they were so close to getting this entire thing completed with just T8s. That's a little bit of a miss in my opinion. There's probably a good reason for it, and I would have to think based on the size of the clip, but this clip's pretty big in the first place. I think they probably could have got away with the T8s, but it's my guess they use this clip design on more than one model. But all in all, a pretty cool design. This here being the Heron Lee. That's right, maybe the L1. Very interesting. Heron Li. I'm going to say Heron Lee. I do like the overall design aesthetics. I like the overall deployment, and I like the general blade shape. If there's any one thing that for me, and I've already talked about the finger choil, but besides that, I do feel like the handle's just a little bit chunky. It's going to be a little bit large in your pocket, but large in my pocket has never been an issue for me. But when you take a look at the overall blade shape and the way that the actual point falls away so fast, there is some sculpting that could have been done back here, but I think they were playing with a design aesthetic. They went with it, and overall, generally, it works. It just ends up being a little bit large in the hand, and especially if you have smaller hands. Guys with big hands are probably going to like this. If you don't mind a larger knife, you're going to like it. Or if you're looking for something that's just going to be a little bit sturdy, a little bit robust, this feels pretty good. With the liner, you would wonder a little bit about the integrity of the G10 over time for something that might be a little bit of a stouter knife, but it seems really rock solid. Not too much problem. Sometimes G10 can feel a little bit hollow. Not in this case. Feels pretty good to me. Now D2, how do I feel about that? I don't have any problem with D2. Performs for me, I've never had a problem, and I think a company like Oknife is going to have it dialed in. So you're not going to have any problem with the steel. A little bit harder to field sharpen, but if you use something like a ceramic rod or a strop, you're not going to have any problem keeping this fine-tuned. And the overall deployment and, little fidget factor is nice. This knife is nice and snappy, has that overall capability of just deploying it quickly. I like that. So all in all, I'd say nicely done. And so again, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Oknife who did provide this for review. And for the rest of you, if you like this content, do me a favor, take a look at my Outer Limitless 2 channel, which is more on the tactical and firearm side of things. At this point, that channel is growing quickly. I have a ton of videos up there. So if you like what you see here on Outer Limitless, do me a favor and check me out on Outer Limitless 2. So, all right, guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.